I'm Ellis Martin. In this segment of the Ellis Martin Report, I speak with Dr. Well-Sells, the president and CEO of Western Copper and Gold Corporation, trading on the New York Stock Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange as WRN. Western Copper and Gold Corporation is developing the Casino Project, Canada's premier copper gold mine in the Yukon Territory, and one of the most economic greenfield copper gold mining projects in the world. The Casino Project hosts approximately 7.6 billion pounds of copper, as well as 14.5 million ounces of gold, one of the largest projects of its kind, again held by a junior mining company in the world. Paul, welcome back to the program. It's great to visit with you again. How are you?
Very good. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Alice.
Listen, we've got fairly stable copper prices, fairly stable gold prices. They've never been this consistently good. In your opinion, what is wrong with the mining equities right now?
My personal opinion is they're too low. It's an interesting time in that you've got gold prices in particular. Gold over 2,000 is strong. Copper is, I would call copper okay, sort of sitting at this sort of 375 to 380 level, but certainly no one's complaining too much. And yet you've got particularly developers such as ourselves, the sector is just been beaten up. And the big thing what that represents is, of course, a buying opportunity. And why I think that I'm excited about the future for Western is a couple of things. First of all, we're in a storm. So you're riding out the storm. What do we need to ride out the storm? It's called cash, right? Number one thing is to have some cash in the bank and not be forced to go out and do punitive financing. We finished off a deal with Rio Tinto last year, brought in $6 million. So we ended Q3 with $38 million in the bank, which is a very strong balance sheet. And that's rule number one in terms of who's going to survive through these things. And then the second thing is the copper market. It is all of the things, all of the indicators on the copper market have never been this strong. The number one indicator, and this is what I look at. So just for your listeners, for yourself, Ellis, the thing that I look at that is the best indicator is the treatment charges that the Chinese smelters are paying on concentrate. So this is the dollars per ton that are being paid by the Chinese smelters for concentrate on the open market. It's typically around $80. $80 is middle of the road. When there's lots of concentrate out there, the smelters are going to say, I want $100 to treat your concentrate because I can treat a whole bunch of people's concentrate. When concentrate supply is tight, the number goes down. It's at $20. I literally have never seen $20. And it's because these smelters can't get copper concentrate. And Cobre Panama shut down. There hasn't been significant new mining starts. China's still 50% of the copper. A lot of that will come back to North America as finished product, but we're going to see a big movement. And you're starting to see the analysts line up behind this. We're going to see a big movement in copper price. And I've said it before on this show, on your show before, our share price moves with the copper price. And I'm pretty excited about the next few months.
So there literally has to be the bloodiest streets we've ever seen, which exists now for the equities, for there to be the kind of movement that you're talking about. All the signs are there. One of the big copper mines, I think, shut down in Panama. Isn't that right?
Yeah, Cobre Panama. Yeah.
That leaves about 9 in the world, I think. 9.
And then so you go, okay, hey, I like copper. The signs are there. Where am I going to invest? Like I said, you look at companies, good jurisdictions, good projects, partners, cash in the bank. I think these are all things that we have at Western.
And look, I am really not spending any money investing in the mining equities right now. And I'm just not, it's not a wise decision. A lot of us have lost money in the mining equities, in the junior explorers. And I put more money into Western Copper and Gold because of one thing, two things. I've been to your project. I know how real it is. How real it is. And I've seen Rio Tinto physically there. And they're there on a regular basis. It's not like they show up once a year or twice a year. They're part of your foundation over there. They've invested quite a bit into your company as Mitsubishi, the significant end user. So I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to put the money here into WRN, which was my choice. You didn't tell me to do it. I didn't have to. You don't make me do that as having you a sponsor of our program. It's completely my choice. I know more than most people do about the company. By most people, most retail investors out there. It doesn't mean I know anything at all. I'm privy to what you guys are doing on a regular basis. I'm thinking, I feel pretty safe with this. While I have let other copper equities go in my portfolio anymore because I can't afford to lose any more money. And even though most of the equities, including yours, have taken a hit in recent weeks on the market, that doesn't faze me at all. In fact, it's a buying opportunity, given that eventually, we don't know when. Nobody can predict that. You may be a significant acquisition for Rio Tinto.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point. We had this agreement with Rio Tinto that expired in November. We signed a new agreement. And I think this is important because the new agreement, people are like, oh, it's just an update. You just rolled it forward and added in 18 months. They gave us $6 million. And I was like, no, there's a subtle and important difference with our new agreement with Rio Tinto. Because like you said, they've been very active. They're up at site. But prior agreement was them evaluating the project. This next phase is really around us working together to get the last few things, few I's dotted and T's crossed. And it's really around, we call it the 3Ps. It's around permitting, it's around port, but those things are actually taking care of themselves. The big thing is around power. And we've got a great solution for power right now using liquefied natural gas. But the Yukon's running out of power. They've been looking at connecting the Yukon grid to the BC grid. So that would give me green hydroelectric power. By our calculations, would half our power cost. And obviously this is something that we need to pursue. And so when I sat down with Rio, we went there for LME Week, which is in November of last year. When we negotiated what we ended up signing at the end of November. And I was like, look, this is a game changer on the project. In terms of cost, in terms of greening up the project as well. We all want to do this, but this is lobbying governments and it's working with governments to try to facilitate this. This isn't just some engineering study that I get to run off and do. And so what Rio has agreed to do is actually work with us on this, to lobby with us side by side in Ottawa, in Whitehorse, because part of it's in British Columbia, in Victoria, to make sure that this happens, because it's great for the project. It's great for bringing critical minerals to market. It's great for the Yukon.
That's one of the questions I'm asked on a regular basis. Like, I'm an expert on politics in British Columbia and the Yukon. Is that power connection going to happen between BC and the Yukon? Will it happen? It's crucial. And if so, when?
Yeah. And I'll be honest, those are the questions that I have as well. And so what I can tell you is that the government is very driven by this. And this is public. They are working towards there's a critical minerals infrastructure fund, which was announced by the government of Ottawa. They're looking to potentially tap into that to get money to do the first studies on this. Let's identify the route. Let's identify some of the engineering. Let's talk to the impacted communities and First Nations, make sure they're on board. So for me, it's not an if, it's a when. Politicians are politicians. When they talk about this as nation building. And it is nation building. You look at Canada. Canada is a very large country. You look at northern Canada. You've been up in Yukon a number of times. Part of the attraction is you walk across a chunk of ground and you go, I probably the only human that's walked across this chunk of ground. Like, it is untapped. And so the idea, of course, is to sustainably develop it. And so if we want to sustainably develop the North and we want to do it in a responsible manner, we need to have power up there. And so this is part of the dialogue that's happening around that as well. And it's going to happen. The question is when. And my goal, and then part of this is working with the governments, lobbying the governments, bringing Rio and Mitsubishi along to push this narrative, is to make sure it happens as quickly as possible.
Is it a federal issue or is it a provincial issue?
I think it's an all of the above issue. In terms of getting people on board, it's a BC and Yukon government issue, but this being a nation building exercise, you want to have the federal government involved in it as well. Yeah. And I've had conversations with all three governments and they're all pretty much on board. So I expect to see some big developments in that area this year, relatively soon.
I looked at your latest news release and you're going to be quite busy this year on the road, aren't you?
Yeah. As I said, the good news is that we've got some cash in the bank. So we're certainly, and I think that this is a great time to buy the stock. So I'm certainly going to be out marketing the company. Lots going on in terms of development. As I said, we've got the new agreement with Rio is a very collaborative agreement. It's probably the first quarter here. We're going to just dot some I's and cross some T's on the project, make sure that there's the Rio. Really what we're looking at is, are there any optimizations that Rio has flagged that we should be incorporating? We've had the initial kickoff meeting on that, went through them. For the most part, it was things that we thought about and I wouldn't say discarded, but parked for now. And yeah, we're going to finish that work off. We expect to have some good announcements, as I said, on power. There's going to be probably some more announcements on the board. We're going to be pushing forward on the permitting work. Yeah, there's lots going on. It's going to be an exciting year at Western. And yeah, as I said, I'm glad you bought some shares, Ellis, because we're getting to this point where there's a point where I phone my mom up and say, Mom, you should buy some Western shares. It's a no-brainer. And when we've got the amount of cash we have in the bank, partners like Rio and Mitsubishi, a great project, great jurisdiction, government's lining up to build me grid power. Come on, this is a simple investment.
Look, you and I are both heavily biased. And I cannot disagree with what you said. And listener, I urge you to do your own research and invest purely at your own risk. Now is not potentially a bad time to take another look at Western Copper and Gold. Paul, thanks so much for joining me today in the program. I look forward to seeing you in Miami in a few weeks at Mines and Money and maybe at the BMO conference.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing you then.
I've been speaking with Dr. Well-Sells, the president and CEO of Western Copper and Gold Corporation, trading on the New York Stock Exchange and the Toronto Stock Exchange as WRN. Go to the company's website, westerncoppercorp.com. I'm Ellis Martin, and I'm an investor with Western Copper and Gold Corporation.